Kevin looked worried as he said, "Ashley, what's wrong? We need to leave soon or we'll miss our flight." I replied with a hint of apology, "I'm sorry. Scott has been feeling under the weather since yesterday, and when I checked his temperature a while ago, it was a shocking 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Under these circumstances, I just can't bear to leave him alone." Kevin, though surprised, showed understanding. "Is that so? Then there's no helping it. We'll have to cancel both our tickets. On the day, we'll incur the full cancellation fee, but it's unavoidable. Could you handle the cancellation process? We'll proceed with our trip as planned, so you take it easy at home." With that, Kevin left the house with a smile, looking excited. The moment Kevin drove away, I immediately added his phone number to the reject list and blocked him on email. Then, with a slight smile, I gently spoke to Scott, who was still soundly asleep. "Scott, it's time to wake up. Today is an important day since we're moving to a new house. My name is Ashley, a 36-year-old housewife married for 10 years. My husband, Kevin, is 39 years old and works as an ordinary office worker. Our only son, Scott, is 9 years old and in the 4th grade of elementary school. We are a very ordinary yet happy family of 3. Our relationship began with a workplace romance, with me as Kevin's senior and trainer. Kevin took a particular liking to me, leading to our marriage after 3 years of dating. Kevin was much younger and more handsome at the beginning of our marriage, with an inverted triangle physique that made him the envy of female colleagues. However, within 3 months of our marriage, Kevin's affair came to light. We got married and started our new life, but I experienced a department change at work and ended up in the Human Resources Department. During this change, Kevin was appointed again to mentor a newly joined female employee at the company. Unfortunately, it seems he took advantage of his position to engage in an inappropriate relationship. Learning this truth, I was furious and quickly brought up divorce. But a few days after making that proposal, an unexpected development occurred. My pregnancy was revealed. Facing the fact of my pregnancy, the immediate divorce was put on hold, and the female employee involved in the affair with Kevin left her job quite swiftly. I'm thinking of this as the last chance. I can't forgive another mistake with the future child in mind. Reconsidering the bonds of family, I resolved to endure once more. Although I originally planned to return to work after giving birth, Kevin's earnest wish led me to ultimately quit my job and dedicate myself to the family. Later, we named our son Scott, and he grew up healthily. Our son's healthy growth brought us great joy, but we also faced several challenges in our life. One of them was the presence of my mother-in-law. My in-laws lived very close geographically, which resulted in them visiting our home almost daily. While it would be appreciated if they helped take care of the child, in reality, they only doted on him, leaving all the actual caregiving tasks, like changing diapers and soothing cries, to me. While I was busy with household chores, my mother-in-law closely observed my housekeeping skills and repeatedly made small criticisms. "Ashley, are you cleaning thoroughly? I see dust accumulating here and there. Ashley, the house smells a bit. You need to regularly take out the dirty diapers to maintain cleanliness. Ashley, could you make some tea and don't forget the snacks? Just avoid crackers. They're too hard. Ashley, I've pre-ordered for lunch. Please take care of the payment. Ashley, it's already evening. Leaving laundry outside like that is questionable." The presence of a mother-in-law who stays from morning till evening without offering any help with household chores or childcare is honestly a huge burden. It's like having an additional baby at home, and dealing with her is nothing but a nuisance. When I question Kevin about her daily visits, all I get is, she must adore Scott too much. It's a blessing that she's here to help with the chores. But the truth is she hasn't helped with anything. In fact, my mother-in-law hasn't been any help with the household or childcare. However, to Kevin, she said, "I think I'm helping." But when I tried to discuss this with Kevin, all I got was, "I'm tired right now. Let's talk about this later." Since these grievances started, Kevin's return home has become even later. Despite not having much overtime before, it increased from about 3 days a week to eventually 5. He started spending weekends out golfing or entertaining, leaving the house empty. I became overwhelmed with taking care of Scott and dealing with the increasing visits from my mother-in-law, while Kevin often came home late at night, barely touched his dinner, took a shower, and went straight to bed. At first, I was understanding of Kevin's actions. He must be tired, I thought with empathy, but years have swiftly passed since then, and Kevin is still extremely busy and constantly burdened with household chores and the demands of my mother-in-law. I feel Kevin prioritizing work over family, drifting away from his role at home, and I find my love for him gradually fading. The thought of divorce crossed my mind countless times, but the conflict of making such a decision for the sake of our son, Scott's future, was too complex. Then a shocking event occurred. The father I dearly loved passed away. This news plunged me into deep sorrow and bottomless sadness. The memory of his constant love and affection as his only daughter added to my anguish. Despite managing his chronic heart condition regularly, he suddenly had an attack while at work, was rushed to the hospital, but passed away just 2 hours after being taken by ambulance. Upon learning this fact, I cried until I had no tears left. Many relatives and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, but from Kevin's side, only my father-in-law showed up. After the funeral, 5 days later, I returned home and then went back to my parents' house upon hearing from my mother that there was a matter regarding the inheritance to discuss. Kevin, who normally wouldn't take the initiative, offered to come with me this time, wondering what made him decide to do so. We arrived at my parents' house to find the lawyer already waiting. Being an only child, the heirs to the estate were just my mother and me. I am here to disclose the contents of the will entrusted by the deceased. The will bequeaths the family home to his beloved wife, Amelia. The total savings of $2 million are to be equally divided between Amelia and Ashley. $2 million. Is that really true? Your father once won a large sum in the lottery. That prize money is still remaining. I have this house and a life insurance your father took out, which will ultimately go to Ashley as well. Therefore, I believe all these savings should go to Ashley. Hearing this, I was enveloped in deep surprise, but my astonishment was matched, if not surpassed, by Kevin's reaction. It's understandable for him to be astounded by his wife's suddenly receiving such a large amount of money. On the drive home, I remained silent, my face devoid of emotion. Kevin continued to drive without uttering a word, a somewhat smug smile on his face. My silence was due to an anonymous email. The moment I got into the car, I received the email. The sender's address was unfamiliar, and upon opening the contentless email, I was momentarily lost for words. Attached were photos of 2 people holding hands while walking, exchanging kisses, and entering a hotel together. One of them was a face I knew all too well. Surprisingly, it was Kevin. The shock of this revelation alone was profound, but the presence of the other person in the photos brought an even greater surprise. It was revealed that the other woman was a former colleague of mine who joined the company at the same time I did. I knew Lily had been dating a male colleague, and they seemed so close that marriage seemed likely at some point. However, I had never imagined that she would be in an affair with my husband, Kevin. Kevin, what's wrong? You haven't said anything for a while. It's unfortunate about your father, but having an inheritance is something to be thankful for. You got a notification for an email earlier, right? Why don't you reply to it? It was just a promotional email. I've already deleted it. I tried to keep my composure, but my voice might have been shaking. The shaking in my voice wasn't due to the sadness of losing my father or the joy of receiving an inheritance, but rather anger and disappointment towards my husband, who neglected our family and was engrossed in his work and another woman. With feelings of anger, the next day I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate their relationship in detail. I visited a local detective agency I found on the internet and knocked on the door. Although it wasn't hard to imagine their affair was real, I decided to wait until I received a detailed report. One day, my mother-in-law said with a full smile brimming with joy, "I'm really looking forward to our next trip to Italy. We have to thank Ashley." "Is that so? Is there a trip planned?" "Yes, that's right. Oh, hasn't Kevin told you yet? We're going to Italy. It's my first trip abroad." "I haven't heard anything about that." Afterwards, I decided to ask Kevin directly about the plan. Kevin revealed the plan with surprising calmness. "Actually, we've planned a family trip to Italy using the long weekend next month. We enjoyed our honeymoon in Italy right after we got married, but for my mother, this will be her first trip abroad." When I told her about it, it turned into an unexpected development, and the news spread among our relatives, ultimately turning into a large group of 23 people. It's like a school trip when we were students, and I think it's a kind of adventure that will be fun in its own way. Wait a minute, I wasn't informed about such an elaborate plan beforehand. And what do you mean by all of us? It's no problem. Fortunately, everyone was able to get time off simultaneously, and as for the kids' school, we can manage a 3-day absence. Faced with this sudden travel plan, I couldn't hide my surprise and confusion, especially the idea of planning a week-long overseas trip that required the kids to miss school. It was utterly unacceptable to me. What shocked me even more was that the cost of the trip for 23 people was expected to be fully covered by me. This was undoubtedly because they had their eyes on the inheritance I had received. All I could do was let out a deep sigh from the bottom of my heart. 2 weeks after hiring a detective to investigate the affair, I went to the detective's office to receive the completed report. The results showed that the affair between my husband and Lily began around the time I quit my job and continued even after our son was born. It was also discovered that my husband was involved with other women. Overwhelmed by sadness, anger, and disbelief, I found myself laughing at the sheer absurdity of the situation. I was so repulsed by the thought of sharing a bed, or even the same air, with my husband that I seriously considered an immediate divorce. But ultimately, I decided to endure it a little longer, despite the unbearable daily pain. I was determined to exact divine retribution on Kevin as my revenge. On the night before departure, Kevin was packing his suitcase filled with excitement. Likely many relatives, including my mother-in-law, were also busy preparing for the trip. Both Scott and I were also packing, but our purpose was fundamentally different from Kevin's. Then came the morning of departure. Kevin left us behind and set off for the planned trip. "Ashley, what are you doing? We're running out of time. We need to catch the plane." "I'm sorry. Actually, Scott has been feeling unwell since last night, and this morning his temperature was over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't leave him alone at home in this condition." "That's tough. Then we have no choice but to cancel for today. Unfortunately, we'll have to bear the full cost of the cancellation, but it can't be helped. Can you handle the cancellation? We'll go ahead as planned, so you stay at home." Saying that, Kevin left the house with a smug smile on his face. Right after ending the call, I quickly blocked Kevin's contacts and set my message to prevent any communication. With a slight smile, I gently spoke to Scott, who was still deep in sleep. "Scott, it's time to wake up. Today is the day we move to our new home." As I had planned, Kevin was left bewildered at the airport departure counter. "What's going on here? Everyone is already gathered and waiting. Why are we the only ones who can't join this trip?" He couldn't hide his panic and confusion. "Sir, we have your reservation here, but the payment required for the trip has not yet been received. It was scheduled to be paid in cash today, but unfortunately, without the payment, we will have to cancel your reservation." What kind of nonsense is that? Kevin tried to call me and even attempted an email, but the call wouldn't go through and the email bounced back with an error. Sensing something was wrong, my mother-in-law called me to find out what had happened. "Ashley, what's going on? Is everything all right? Scott and I have canceled our trip to Italy." "Never mind that. Why haven't you paid for the trip yet? Where am I supposed to find such a large amount of money?" "From the inheritance you received, of course. I'm sorry for the late notice, but Kevin and I officially divorced yesterday. I can't afford to spend such a large amount of money for my now ex-husband. This is no time for such foolishness. Pay that bill right now, Ashley. Are you listening?" I gently ended the call and immediately added Kevin's entire family, starting with my mother-in-law, to my phone's block list, faced with the reality that no matter how much they tried, they couldn't go on the trip. Kevin would have to return home shaking with anger and subjected to the cold stares of his relatives. However, when he returned home, Scott and I were no longer there. Only a letter left on the dining table and a few evidence photos quietly waited for him. I made my final decision regarding Kevin and left a decisive letter. The divorce proceedings are complete. Legally, we are now strangers to each other. Soon you will receive a formal notification through the lawyer, so please don't forget to make payments for alimony and child support. Along with this calm yet firm message, I included several photos showing his infidelity with Lily and left the letter on the dining table. It's a pity I won't be able to see his reaction to this letter firsthand, but any regret he may have upon returning home is too late. The path he faces now is the natural consequence of the choices he made when his infidelity was discovered early in our marriage. I had him fill out a divorce form. "If this happens again, I will never forgive you," I clearly warned him. I kept that divorce form for years, and finally, yesterday, I signed it and submitted it to the City Hall. With this act, Kevin and I have officially become strangers in both name and reality. When Kevin returned home and the lawyer visited, Kevin was reportedly left standing alone in despair. No one answered, and the front door was left unlocked. The lawyer notified him of obligations related to property division, alimony, child support payments, a restraining order, and the possibility of wage garnishment if payments were delayed. Faced with all these facts, Kevin was completely dumbfounded. His astonishment stemmed not only from having to fulfill his financial obligations to me, but also from the reality of paying cancellation fees to the travel agency. The total cost for the trip to Italy for 23 people, including round-trip business class flights, luxury hotel stays, and optional tours, amounted to about $300,000. The relatives who had been looking forward to the trip learned of the cancellation only upon arriving at the airport and expressed strong condemnation towards Kevin and my mother-in-law. They had gone to the trouble of adjusting work and school schedules and even preparing to take the children out of school, so this sudden change was a major shock to them. The note detailing the payment was handed to me, but the reservation was made under my mother-in-law's name, so she was directly billed for the cancellation fee. Despite my being saddled with the actual payment responsibility, I never received a single invoice personally. To resolve this mess, my in-laws put their house on the market and poured all their savings into settling the cancellation fee. This series of events led to heightened criticism from relatives, and I heard my mother-in-law became significantly more withdrawn, leading a quieter life than ever before. On the other hand, Kevin is financially strained by the alimony and child support for me, as well as the compensation to Lily's husband. He had to give up the luxury apartment we lived in and now resides in an old, small apartment, significantly lowering his standard of living. Although his salary hasn't been garnished yet, the scandal has caused ripples at his workplace, leaving him almost completely isolated. Lily, overwhelmed by the pressure at work, chose to resign, but I am making sure the lawsuit for her compensation is proceeding. I intend to seek proper redress for all the pain they have caused me. The sender of the anonymous email that initiated everything is still not definitively identified. However, the information contained in the email address allowed for some speculation. The sequence of numbers following the free email address, 318, is definitely Lily's birth date, and the other, 1123, is likely the sender's own birth date. There is only one person among my acquaintances whose birthday matches this date, and that is Luke. He is a male colleague who joined the company the same year as us and had a history of dating Lily. Although we never had a deep conversation, I am genuinely grateful for his actions. That unexpected email gave me the courage to accept the end with Kevin and step into a new life. After the divorce from Kevin was finalized, Scott and I have been living peacefully in our newly chosen apartment. Moreover, my mother will soon join us to start living together, moving from her house to here. Scott, I'm truly sorry I couldn't forgive your father, and that might have made you feel lonely too. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. It's okay, Mom. You've done nothing wrong. The one who is really at fault is Dad. I can never forgive him for betraying you and me. I don't feel lonely at all, and from now on, I'll make sure to protect you, so don't worry. Scott's strong and heartwarming words gave me great courage and assurance. Knowing how splendidly and strongly Scott has grown, thinking about the new life that will soon start with my mother joining us makes me feel that my life ahead is still full of promise. Our family's new beginning is just the prologue to the new chapter that